On Saturday, the 7th of December, 18.8 million elections and how far they're going in terms of preparation for the elections tomorrow. I am Olive Emodio. Welcome to the show.
Welcome to Breakfast Central. I'm Joe Hansen reporting for duty. Most importantly, aside from the Ghanaians getting ready to vote in the next president, there are calls that it would be one of the toughest elections to hold in Ghana. Now, don't forget, too, that News Central will be bringing to you updates of that election from 1 hour to the other, starting from 9 a.m. today. And then tomorrow, all through tomorrow, we'll give you insight and updates of what's happening in different parts of Ghana. But then again, as we look to Ghana, we'll also come back home and look at the controversial tax reform bills. That conversation hasn't stopped. Rather, it has moved to the next level because the South region, its governors and so on all met and decided that tax reform bills should actually stay. Now, they've called on other governors, not forgetting to other members of the House, to take an intrinsic look into the reform bills and ensure that it is passed into law. The Senate President himself also came out to say, listen, nothing is going to deter us or stop us from ensuring that these bills are being passed. But I'm not just speaking because I am in support of the tax reforms bills. Personally, I'm also saying that I think it's time all northern governors and those who seem to have a little issue with the reforms bills take time out to read through it. We must also mention here on the show that we feel that the dragging from this place to the other place, from the north, is starting to wear an ugly hat that Nigerians need to avoid, and that's the hat of bringing in tribalism, also bringing in the fact that, oh, the north is being segregated from certain things. Come on. It's a law that's been put in place. There are bills that will be passed, and most importantly, there are bills that will benefit everyone. I like the fact that the bill says if your at the end of the year as a company, if you don't make up to 50 million in terms of profit, then you don't have to pay tax.
And individuals as well. Good. Like if you don't earn a salary of 800,000 naira a year, you don't have to pay tax. However, the downside to that is if you were to do the simple math, let's say, of dividing 800,000 naira, and I'm just going to do that now. So 800,000 naira divided by 12, yes? And that would
66,000 naira, roughly 67.
That's less than the minimum wage. So imagine that the average Nigerian worker that's earning a minimum wage of 70,000 naira, multiply that by 12 months. And when you multiply that by 12, it gives you, so that's 70,000. That they are still not yet paying, 840,000. And in the grand scheme of things, 70,000 naira a month can do so little.
But there's a good news to that.
Tell me.
If you're earning 70,000 naira, you're not paying tax.
No. So per month, at the end of the year, it comes up to 840,000.
You're still not paying tax.
So you're sure about that?
Yes. That's what the law says. If your salary is 70,000 naira, you're earning the minimum wage, you are exempted from tax.
Okay, I'm not sure about that, but
no, I've gone through it, and I'm like, so what else? So everybody who works in the, if you work in the MDAs, if you work with, on the federal government, and you're receiving the minimum wage of 70,000 naira, you're exempted from tax. That's what it says. Okay. And Taiwo Yedele made it clear. The truth is, we're starting to see. I like what's happening, to be honest with you. I like what's really going on. And the reason why I like it is because these are bills that are being created or brought up by the federal government. And some of the bills or some of the points there in the bills are going to benefit Nigerians. Not just that, I like the fact that there seems to be a divide, and I like the divide. I'll tell you why I like it. I like it for a few reasons. One, it's starting to show that the governors should not depend on FAC. You need to do your best to ensure that your state generates a lot of income that would indeed bring about positivity and also help the people of the state to enjoy the dividends of democracy. the times where you just wait for the federal government allocation, when it comes, you collect, and then people don't see what it's being used for. Don't forget, the federal government allocation has indeed doubled since President Tinubu got into power. They've received even more than they used to receive from the time of President Muhammadu Buhari and, of course, Jonathan Goodluck. But now that they're receiving it, the question people are asking is, what are they doing with it? Some governors are saying we're doing, similarly, Fubara had said that they're doing more. So because of that, because of the increase, he's not willing to pay 70,000. He's willing to go up to 100,000. He's willing to go up to 150,000. That's what he said. Lagos State Governor had said that for him, he's not paying 70,000. He's paying 100,000. So
Lagos State has always been different.
Yeah.
And
even the Lagos State is going to lose from the tax reforms bills. Lagos State will not receive what it used to receive from VAT, because now it's about getting VAT from the state that has the highest consumption.
And it was quite interesting.
Production.
Many people had expected that Lagos State will kick back again or push back against
but it didn't.
It's been very cooperative. But also just to mention that there's a contrary to the information that not many media houses, and including ours, I know we had spoken about the suspension of the tax reform bills.
Yeah, that was a story all through yesterday.
Yes, but it's not been suspended. They've come out to clear the air that they're still proceeding with the conversations about the tax reform bills and that it's not been suspended. And we'll keep following up with it. And that's one of the stories that we're going to be looking at this morning. But then you raised a valid point about how it has then showed a bit of some level of tribalism. The thing about tribalism, which is quite interesting, I was reading a book by Chinua Achebe, and he wrote the book in 1983. It was first published in 1983. The book is The Trouble with Nigeria. And in looking into the story that he painted, he talked about several factors: patriotism, tribalism. Tribalism was a key factor there. It will shock you to see how much of a problem it was then. And you would think that by now, many years later, 1984 to 1983 to now is how many years later? Well, almost 40 years later, if not more, we are still having the same conversations. Will we ever get to the point where Nigerians are not, everybody's not coming there for their own personal interest? Everybody's not coming there because, my region. If we saw Nigeria as one whole entity, one whole country, just like in Rwanda, for example, where they will find it insulting for you to ask, where are you from? If you meet a person from Rwanda, they're Rwandese. Yeah. They've seen the effect of what the genocide did to their people. So to them, it's insulting, especially because this was a genocide that was caused by tribalism. Everybody from my own clan killing the people from the other clan. So we've seen the impact of that, and we've decided we're just one big country. And today, something that's not operative there. Will Nigeria ever get there? I don't know, but I hope that we can move beyond. Because if we saw ourselves as one big entity, conversations about this will not favor my region, that will not favor my region, we'll see a lot of that reduced. It won't be as prominent as it currently is.
I agree with you. I agree with you 100%, because we've gotten to that level where I do recall there were mentions that maybe we should even take out state of origin from our data and allow people to fill in state of origin. It shouldn't be a prerequisite for getting a job, for gaining employment, and so on. It should just be what we have on data that, I am from Akwa Ibom, I am from a certain region, or better still, I'm from the north, I'm from Kano, I'm from Kaduna, and so on. But if we make it a core thing that it must be there, it's always highlighted, then that would be it have a negative impact on exactly what we're seeing. But then again, the South-South senators who met on Wednesday, their meeting actually sprung up what we would call a new spirit of ensuring that this bill must be passed. And the Senate President also spoke yesterday. While he spoke, he said they're not going to be intimidated into ensuring that this bill is further reviewed and then thrown out of the gutters. I'm worried. And my worry simply is, why are they kicking against a bill that will eventually see the governors and states get to work, and Nigerians will benefit? Remember that the same Nigerians are the ones shouting that big companies are leaving, enterprises are leaving. Why wouldn't they leave? If the tax reform committee saw that Nigerian companies and Nigerians are paying over 60 taxes, 60 Olive.
So there's opportunity for a lot of leakage to happen, a lot of tax. There'll be duplicity in many cases.
Plenty.
So it would cut down the excesses, and those who are maybe profiting from the current deficient system. You know, when you mentioned something about us getting to the point where people are not asked, what's your state of origin?
Yeah.
Still referencing the book that I was reading, he was talking about, Chinua Achebe was talking about how in a letter he was writing a recommendation to someone who was trying to get into the University of Pittsburgh. And, you know, in that recommendation, they wrote there boldly, please, you know, make no recommendation or make no reference to their state of origin or their nation of origin or their creed. So basically highlighting the fact that this is something that we need to move past. And I just wanted to mention that because still tribalism was a problem then, still it is a problem now. And if we don't find a way around it, in the next 20, 30 years, our children and their children will be watching this interview and saying, oh, our grandparents struggled with tribalism, and today it's even, you know, it's even worse. But I think these are conversations that we'll explore much later today. But now let's share with you what our top stories are this morning on Breakfast Central before we bring you breakfast headlines.
Today, Senator Okoyemi Bamidele refutes tax reform bill suspension claim. Like we've mentioned rightly, there's no suspension of it. Nationwide protest looms over Dele Farotimi's detention, and we'll have this conversation today. EFCC commits to transparent use of recovered funds, and they are begging on all Nigerian youths to join them in fighting corruption ahead of Ghana's presidential election 2024. We'll look at what's at stake and what's going to happen, most importantly, from today to tomorrow. And the front pages of newspapers will definitely be up next. But let's bring to you breakfast headlines.
Welcome now. Let's begin breakfast headlines by telling you that as plenary resumed at the House of Representatives on Thursday, 5 lawmakers of the Labour Party have defected to the All Progressives Congress. They are Esosa Iyawe, Edo, Tochukwu Okere, Imo, Donatus Matthew, Kaduna, Basi Akiba, Cross River, and Dailiop from Plateau. Also, a lawmaker, Eria Kate Ibori Sueno from Delta, dumped the People's Democratic Party, PDP, for the APC. The now former Labour Party lawmakers cited division within their party as the main reason for their defection. After over 20 years of its formation, pro-workers political organization, Labour Party made inroads into mainstream politics during the 2023 elections as the party got 6 Senate and over 34 House of Representatives seats. And in the meantime, the Labour Party revealed that it would request the leadership of the House of Representatives to declare vacant the seats of its former members who recently defected to the All Progressives Congress. The opposition party also vowed to take legal action against the defecting lawmakers and announced that it had opened a register for members of the House and other elected officials who disgraced the party by switching allegiance to other political platforms. This was disclosed in a statement issued in Abuja by the party's National Publicity Secretary, Obiora Ifo. And now moving on to tax conversations, the Nigerian Senate has debunked claims that the proposed tax reform bills have been suspended or withdrawn. Senate President Godswill Akpabio made this clear on Thursday, emphasizing the chamber's independence and its dedication to protecting the interest of Nigerians. Akpabio's statement followed a point of order raised by Senate leader Okoyemi Bamidele, who expressed dissatisfaction with media reports suggesting the bill had been withdrawn. He clarified the executive holds the right to withdraw the bill, but not the Senate.
As far as we are concerned, the tax reform bills are alive in this hollow chamber. They are receiving consideration at various levels, and we are open to discussions, to negotiations, to interface. But let it not be said anywhere that we suspended further consideration of these bills. And also it would be laughable for anybody to also think or say or report that the bills were withdrawn. Because like I said, there are executive bills that can only be withdrawn by the executive. And there's no reason to do so. Because these bills we believe are in overriding public interest, and will do everything possible to ensure that across geopolitical interests, across, political parties, across religious interest, everybody that has concern, civil society, everybody that has concern is given a chance to contribute to the passage of these laws.
I also shy away from deleting or abrogating or stopping whatever we feel is not in the public interest. But for the tax reform bills, we believe that there are too many provisions there that would definitely help Nigerians. You can't imagine what it means for businesses that earn less than 50 million not to pay tax. You can't imagine what it means for multiplicity of taxes to be abrogated. You can't imagine what it means for people who earn less than the minimum wage or even minimum wage not to pay tax. So the exemptions are such that up to 100 million Nigerians will benefit from these tax reform bills. So let's not listen to social media. Let's not listen to Arise Television, and I hope they are well guided with the explanation of the Senate leader.
And now let's move to northeastern Nigeria, where the Borno State Deputy Governor Umar Kadafo and over 100 other passengers narrowly escaped a tragic incident when a Max Air aircraft experienced an engine fire shortly after takeoff from Maiduguri International Airport. The incident occurred around 7 p.m. on Wednesday when the aircraft en route Abuja suffered engine failure caused by a bird strike about 10 minutes into the flight. The pilot and the crew managed to execute an emergency landing back at Maiduguri Airport, averting disaster. A Max Air staff member who spoke on condition of anonymity confirmed the incident on Thursday morning. And now to Ghana, where a delegation of the West African Elders Forum Observation Mission, led by former President Goodluck Jonathan, has arrived in Accra, Ghana, ahead of the 7th December general elections in the country. The WIF's communications officer, Wealth Dixon Ominabo, disclosed this in a statement made available to the news agency of Nigeria in Abuja. According to Ominabo's statement, Jonathan urged Ghanaians to be patriotic and strive for free, fair and peaceful elections when he first arrived in Ghana. Other members of the delegation include former Burkinabe Prime Minister and President of the ECOWAS, Kadri Ouedraogo, Executive Director of the Goodluck Jonathan Foundation, Anne Iyonu, and Special Advisor on Media to Jonathan, Ikechukwu Eze. And that's all on Breakfast Headlines. Now back to Breakfast Central. I am Olive Emodi.
You're watching News Central, and this is Breakfast Central. Let's quickly tell you that the chairman of Nigeria's anti-graft agency, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, has pledged to safeguard and monitor recovered funds to ensure they are not relooted. The chairman, Ola Olukoyede, made this known in Abuja during a town hall meeting organized by the agency to mark the 2024 International Anti-Corruption Day. Our correspondent, Joshua Marayu, was there and he filed in this report.
The call to shun corruption and financial crimes took center stage as Nigeria's anti-graft agency, the Economic and Financial Crimes Commission, held a town hall meeting to mark the 2024 International Anti-Corruption Day. The event was attended by student groups, transparency organization, and anti-graft crusaders who converged at the EFCC headquarters in Nigeria's capital, Abuja. In his speech, the EFCC chairman says that the commission remains committed to ensuring that no recovered funds are relooted.
And we said any money we recover or property we recover, we will not allow it to be relooted again. So we are not just going to recover and go to sleep. No, we'll monitor what is done with it. So we are proud to say that well over 20,000 civil servants have also benefited from the Credit Corp project that they use the process of crime recovered by EFCC to also support, in addition to net fund.
Panelists at the town hall session urged Nigerian youths to become agents of change within their respective communities.
Young people, you can be agents of change. Nobody's going to do the work for you. We're helping you to do the work because this is your future. If you see something anywhere, even if your father is a minister and is corrupt, speak out.
It is important that young people begin to understand that there's a huge implication for supporting corruption and corrupt people. Otherwise, I cannot understand how somebody, will be standing trial in court for corruption, polluting, and then youths who are hungry will now be rented to go and be supporting that kind of person.
The town hall meeting highlighted the importance of collective responsibility in fostering transparency in the country, urging young Nigerians to join the fight to entrench a corruption-free nation. In Abuja for News Central, I am Joshua Imarayi.
Very interesting reports there from the EFCC, also calling on the youth to ensure that they join the fight against corruption. But that's not all. Just in case you're wondering, in 1 year since the EFCC changed this hencho, or better still, Mr. Olu Koyode there, EFCC has secured 3,455 convictions, and they've recovered a total of 248 billion naira. Take note, 248 billion naira. Now, this is minus the recent one, which they say is the biggest asset that they have ever been able to seize. And that asset has been talked about in the past few 48 hours. Who it belongs to? Well, EFCC still hasn't put out a clear statement, an official statement, refusing to name names or call the name of the person. But of course, news sources and wires have gone ahead to mention the former CBN governor, saying that he seems to own these properties, 753 duplexes, illegally or fraudulently built right here in Nigeria. Plus, EFCC has also been able to recover $105 million. All of this in 1 year. And in that report you saw, they're promising to ensure that they would make sure the money goes back into the system. But I have a question, and these questions are part of the questions every single Nigerian is asking. How are we certain? How are we sure? How do we know, most importantly, that these funds have been plunged back into the society or the economy to ensure a smooth run of Nigeria's economy, especially now that we're challenged with the current situation that we find ourselves in? Economic downturn, challenges here and there. Olive, I don't know what your thoughts are, but
I'm just
248 billion naira recovered in 1 year.
That's great news. But then again, I'll come back to talk about why the trust deficit, right, is why when the EFCC makes announcements like that, rather than people being excited, you know, people would, well, excited would, I don't know if excitement is the word, because first of all, how do we get to the point where we're not having those kind of loots or those amount of monies looted in the first place? How do we put systems and structures that deter people from going into political positions with the sole intention to steal and cut away their own, you know, monies and, you know, just look out for themselves and their loved ones? And Nigeria's problem, there's a value problem, right? There's a value. Our problems are a lot when it comes to stories like this. First of all, there's a values challenge. People don't really have values, right? So it's why they go there, make very lofty, flowery promises and go there and deliver absolutely nothing. The system and political parties are set up in such a way that it's ridiculously expensive to run a campaign. So when you're spending billions to get your form and run the campaign, it's expected that when you get into office, there's an unwritten rule that when you get back into office, all the people that threw in their money, is like an investment. There has to be ROI. So you are going there with the sole intention of having to steal your way back. It's why the House of Assembly, National Assembly, people will die on the line just to get in there, because it almost feels like if you're a smart person and you can get into the National Assembly and serve a tenure, I mean, they hardly ever just stay one tenure, but you can serve there, you are set for life. You, your children and their children,
and
you
your
are
family
set.
members.
You are doing well, you are okay. So that's the perspective, you know, until we start to disincentivize politics. We wouldn't see situations where we will not be having reports of EFCC recovering loot of how many billion, because they'll keep looting. And then the other angle is Nigerians being worried about the fact that even when they recover this, it's like Abacha loot. Whenever we hear that,
it never stops.
You say, oh, we've recovered so and so amount of Abacha loot, and Nigerians' next reaction is, hope they don't re-loot it again. Because you ask yourself, when these monies are recovered, what is it being used for? Is there adequate accountability for these monies that are taken away? So it's just a lot that we need to do in terms of reorganizing the way that we run politics in the country to make it not look as flashy, flamboyant, and as financially rewarding as it currently is. So we then know those who are there to truly serve. Because if you're there to truly serve, if they take away all the flash pomp and pageantry that surrounds politics as is, you will still want to run for office because you're there with a heart to serve. But what we have currently is people who are there to enrich their pockets. And not only are they enriching their pockets, even this youth, if you watch that report by Joseph Imari, one of the person speaking there said, young people have a huge role to play, that if you find that your father or your parents are corrupt, you should report them. How many? Genuinely. How all these politicians that are stealing money, don't they have children? Do they not have children that are living lavish lives abroad?
They don't live here, by the way.
Yeah,
the children, the kids don't live here.
They live abroad. They attending the best schools. So how many young people will be willing to genuinely call out their parents? How many genuinely call out their parents and say, Mom, Dad, you are stealing money, you are a thief. And as such, I will not associate myself with what you're doing. Instead, what happens is that people get into office, they are looking for how to, establish their own children. Their children get into office, and when they get into office, they continue from where their parents stop. Even a number of these people who are saying that they are clamoring for politics and clamoring for leadership, if you give them the same opportunities, they're not going to do much. Some would argue that they're not able to do much because the system and the structures that already exist will foster corruption and will not allow them to.
Absolutely.
And that's right.
That's right.
That's an angle. But there are others. I say again, we need to go back to the point where people genuinely have love for the country and people have values, where people understand that it's the little things. You are not trying to get a contract and pad it. You're not trying to bribe your way into getting them to put your file on top of other people's files. It's just the little things and the values that show the quality of character of the people that are at the head of affairs.
You've highlighted it all. That's the more reason why you would wonder why a tax reform bill would still struggle to be passed, or is still being it's still going through stringent processes.
No, I'm happy about that too. Because, you know why? I feel that we should have more interest, more conversations, because there are a number of bills that they sneak and pass in the middle of the night when Nigerians are sleeping.
Of course.
I will be glad to see that now, there's a certain level of political awakeness, allow me to use that word, that is happening. There's a certain level of political sensitization, people getting more interested. Be more interested in the bills that are being passed. Let's argue it out, debate it in the House, get the public's opinion. And when the public kicks back, if there's a way they need to go back and... I'm very excited about the back and forth.
It's good. I mean, even the committee has said if the Green and the Red Chamber want to meet and debate on the policies of the reform bills, they're good to go. But then again, back to what the EFCC has said, not bad. EFCC has said, let's fight corruption. But then again, you also recall that there is a civil society legislative center, CISLAC, who had purportedly said that the EFCC recovered funds are being relooted. This had moved the EFCC to come out and say, no, they're not being relooted. Rather, they are all put in the government's coffers and the government's purse as soon as they get these funds. But how are Nigerians certain that these monies or the monies recovered are being put back into the government's purse? Well, you may wonder, just like every other Nigerian will wonder. The reason is because when you say you've recovered over $5 billion in the past, let's say maybe 20, 25 years or so, Nigerians are now asking, why are we still borrowing from the international community? Why is IMF our best friend? Why are we calling on the Chinese or China to ensure that we can get funds and so on? Of course, everybody will say there's nothing wrong with borrowing. We've heard that many times, that Nigeria is even under par when you when you look at Nigeria and other existing countries that have been borrowing, that Nigeria is not even up to that, because we still have enough. Even the minister did come out to say that we're still going to borrow more because we still have room to borrow more. We haven't borrowed enough. But why would you borrow if you've been able to recover looted funds? Another thing I think that can be done, if the EFCC thinks that they want to really clear their name out of this issue of the monies you recovered have been relooted, I think there should be a data data that clearly speaks to the monies that have been recovered, when they have actually been returned back to the government coffers, and how they are being used by the government as well. I think the government owes Nigerians and the EFCC the duty to say, this money you gave to us will be used. The Lagos-Ibadan Expressway Road has never been fixed in completion. We're always having issues over that and over that. So it begs to worry that, the statement made by the EFCC is one that, we would accept, but then again, we also need to ensure that the right measures are being taken and every single person is being understood or heard when they speak about the monies being reluted, so that they can be cleared and then we can have clarity as regards what's been happening with the funds.
Absolutely. Now let's move on to another conversation. A group of Nigerian military veterans have protested at the nation's Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, demanding the payment of their entitlements and benefits owed to them by the federal government for over 1 year. The veterans barricaded the entrance of the ministry for several hours, insisting on compensation, including palliative payments, reimbursement of deductions, a 20% to 28% salary addition, and about 32,000 naira added to their pension, amongst others. Our correspondent, Idong Joseph, has more on this story.
This protest comes after months of unfulfilled promises and mounting frustration by military veterans following years of active service on the front line for the nation. Barricading the Ministry of Finance, Budget and National Planning, they are demanding the payment of their long-promised entitlements, which have remained unpaid.
We have come to request approval of funds from Ministry of Finance to pay our outstanding entitlements, and they are not really big money.
I am just about 65 years old. But what about those who are up to 80 years amongst us here? Some of us do not even afford money to buy a house or to build a house on our own. Tell me, how will you be happy?
Things are very hard. Our pension cannot even take us home. So we have to struggle to feed ourselves and our family. And this has affected us a lot.
While expressing concerns about repeated promises made to them, they say that they will continue their protest until they receive payments.
If we are given the impression that it's all about Ministry of Finance not releasing funds, we have decided to take our fight to Ministry of Finance, that they must approve our money and we get some assurance in form of credit alerts before we leave here.
After several hours of waiting and negotiation, the leadership of the Military Pension Board arrived at the scene, promising the release of part of the funds owed.
Nobody goes to pay people your money today. All right, sir.
The veterans are insisting that the failure to complete the remaining balance by the end of December will lead to further protest. In Abuja for News Central, I am Idong Joseph.
Very embarrassing reports. Embarrassing because just, I think, 2-3 days ago, Osal Gyobonwa, in his Which Way Nigeria report, had talked about how we treat our senior citizens. On the 15th of January, we'll be celebrating the Armed Forces Remembrance Day. Everyone will wear poppy. There'll be some sort of a celebration to mark the effort that these people putting their lives on the line, serving their nation, and this is what they get in return. Like, seeing the demands that they had, 32,000 naira added to their pen, 32,000 naira increase. Just hearing it makes my heart break. Look at that man sharing at 65 years, when you're coming to the point where you're supposed to be winding down and enjoying your life. This is what they have to do, protesting for their payment, protesting for them, things that should be their natural entitlements. Those are the things that they're protesting for. Again, we are not doing well for our senior citizens. A number of these people have given the active years of their lives to the service of their nation. The very least that they demand, or the very least that they deserve, is the nation that they have served for so long, caring for them. And a young person watching might think, how is this any of my business? My parents are okay, they're probably not affected by this. You are young today, but tomorrow you'll be old. And then when you become old, you probably, maybe, you never know what the tide will turn, you know, if the tide will turn in your favor or not. And you probably might end up being one of those people fighting for your pensions. Imagine that's something you've worked for. Every year, I get pension notifications, even though sometimes you're cringing and thinking, I have worked this hard. Altogether, is this what has come? You know, you're seeing this pension, but you know that this is what you're supposed to survive with when you no longer can work and take care of yourself, so that you're not a burden to maybe your children or a burden to the society. Yet, this is what a number of them have to deal with, and it's so embarrassing. It's embarrassing. It's beyond embarrassing. It's actually sad. It's, I mean, watching that report by Idong Joseph, I mean, a well-covered report, it also brings fear to one's heart, because you really don't know what tomorrow would look like. These are some of the reasons why you have the Japa syndrome on the rise, because if you ask a typical Nigerian who has made up his mind to abandon his relatives, his friends here in Nigeria and relocate to an unknown space where he looks forward to adapt, to acclimatize, and then start to build his family by blocks here and there, you will get to understand why he openly says, I don't think I want to spend the rest of my life or the entirety in Nigeria, because they look at it, you have to wait. Even those of us here on TV at some point would have to ask ourselves pertinent questions, thought-provoking questions. What if I get to 70 years? I can ask 3 of them and get everyone thinking. Would there be medical services that would cater to my needs, hospitals and so on? We're seeing them, they're going into comatose now. Would it be better? There's so many I just recently saw, and I just want to mention this, I just recently saw a bank that is offering services to senior citizens and saying, no, if you open an account with us, that will ensure you get free medical care. We're not charging you on any of your cards. And I thought that that was brilliant. I think that we should have more initiatives that prioritize our senior citizens. But that will be conversations that we will continue with. Let's move on to other stories. The Nigerian Senate is moving forward with the tax reform bills, refuting reports suggesting that it had been suspended or withdrawn. Senate President Goodluck Jonathan emphasized the chamber's independence and commitment to protecting Nigerians' interests as they deliberate on the contentious bills. Akpabio made these remarks after Senate leader Opeyemi Bamidele raised concerns about the reports. Bamidele clarified that the executive has a right to withdraw the bills, but the Senate is proceeding with caution. An ad hoc committee was formed to address concerns and report back to the Senate.
As far as we are concerned, the tax reform bills are alive in this hollow chamber. They are receiving consideration at various levels, and we are open to discussions, to negotiations, to interface. But let it not be said anywhere that we suspended further consideration of these bills. And also, it will be laughable for anybody to also think or say or report that the bills were withdrawn.
Well, in a related development, the Senate passed the Investments and Securities Bill 2024 for its 3rd reading. Now, this bill aims to empower the Securities and Exchange Commission, SEC, as the apex regulatory authority for Nigeria's capital market. Well, joining us now is the Group CEO of Global Investment and Trade Company, GITC, a strategist and policy analyst, Malam Baba Yusuf. Good morning, and it's good to have you join us. Most importantly, it thrills my heart to know that you are an advocate and a supporter of the tax reforms bills. Most importantly, looking at the fact that there are conversations around the North not accepting this. My first question to you is this starting to become a tribal a war, suggestively, a tribal war? And what do you think is the core problem that's delaying the passage of these reforms bills?
Thank you for having me. I wouldn't call it a tribal war like I was saying yesterday somewhere else. I'm looking at the cup half full to say that this will turn a new page in the political history of Nigeria. Indeed, I believe that if some of us who I see myself as somebody that has the responsibility to speak to Northern Nigerians like I have done. I have had cause to specifically speak to Northern Nigerians on my YouTube podcast, Reflections with Baba Yusuf. And the title is dear Northern Nigeria, what have we done to ourselves? It is time for us to start, speaking to these issues. This is not the first time we will have something that is germane with regards to national unity and national progress, and some political leaders from the north will give it ethnic or tribal colorations. Indeed, the northern politicians are not the only ones guilty. The political leaders in this country have been weaponizing ethnicity, tribalism, and also religion for their own selfish interests. That being said, I believe that with the current advocacy and sensitization that we are doing, I expect the government to do more. It will bring to the front runner that in some cases, or in most cases, these politicians lie to their people. And if we are able to achieve that with this tax reform, it will reverse this trend of disinformation and selective misinformation to achieve political interest. And the moment the people realize that they are always being shortchanged for selfish interest, this trend will change for the better for this country. I believe that the tax reform is for the good. It's a reform that speaks to balance. It's a reform that speaks to equity. And it will be a platform that will bring about improvements for the country going forward. I said somewhere else that also this will be a platform to start how we can restructure Nigeria and engender unity, because people will have a sense of belonging. And then there will be focus on the subnationals to deliver, because they keep on collecting money and we don't see the impact of subnationals. And interestingly, now governors are becoming activists. Isn't it interesting?
Well, thank you very much for explaining it as clearly as you have. You raised a certain perspective that a number of these governors and a number of these people are bringing in the political and religious argument for selfish reasons. And I want us to touch on the religious argument for a little bit. Talk to us about what the religious argument are, or arguments are. We've heard that the number of, some of the arguments that we've heard is that Islam talks about how certain properties should be shared from a person, that it discourages inheritance. And there have been a few arguments that we've had regarding this. So how do we sort out the tension that arises between these policies and people's religious beliefs?
I can tell you real straightforward, Olive, that I have read the entire bill as a practice and as a Muslim. I have spoken to Northern Muslims today also on my weekly back page polling, which is always on Friday, speaking to why the Northern Nigerians should not reject this bill. And within that column, I will say what I say here, which is very important to the Muslims and to all of us, because this will also give us clarity with regards to this tension within religious context. In the Holy Quran, in Surah Al-Anbiya, ayat number verse 7, ayat verse 21, ayat number 7, if I get it right. And in that surah, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala spoke to the need for people to seek for knowledge and understanding on matters that are beyond their scope of specialization before they take decisions. These are the words of Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, not the words of anybody. And if anybody is a Muslim, and I'll use this opportunity with profound respect to speak to our, religious leaders, in this case, the Islamic clerics, to be guided by this verse of the Holy Quran, that this issue of tax, like other issues that require specialists, perspectives or insights, as religious leaders, we are not omnipotent, we are not omnipresent, only God is. And therefore, you can seek for knowledge and understanding of whatever it is, whether it's on economy, on politics, whatever, before you take a position. And I'll give you an example. I saw a lot of notable scholars and academics in the North, raising this issue that the bill is antithetical to Islam, specifically mentioning, if I may refer to this particular chapter, I think it is section 2 or 3, where they alluded to the fact that inheritance will be tax deductible, which is not true. That particular section they are referring to is referring to the income, family income, not inheritance. Because in Islam, to deduct tax from inheritance is forbidden. In the entire document, there is nowhere inheritance was referred to. That particular section, those scholars, academics, and intellectuals were referring to did not discuss inheritance with due respect to them. And I implore them to be circumspect in the research. Anybody that gets to the level of PhD or professor understands the tenets of research. So there is nothing like that as far as I'm concerned in that context. And as far as I know, if there are issues that also have, are sensitive to Islam, that is why we have consultation. That is why we have engagement. That is why we have public hearing. Why not for people, if they really care, rather than shouting hue and cry on something we don't really understand, to go there and engage and raise your objections. A bill is not sacrosanct. A bill is not law. Why don't we engage properly and demonstrate intelligence and demonstrate context, in which case we can negotiate or even stamp our feet and say this is antithetical to our religion. So as far as I'm concerned, there's nothing like that as far as I can see. And like I said, if there is, we can always submit that. And I believe because it is still in the process of legislation, it will be reviewed in line, with the tenets of the Constitution so that it will be an acceptable bill. But just because of a notion, we don't just throw away an entire reform that will bring a reform to an antiquated reform tax, law, which is almost older than the independence of Nigeria.
Well said. I mean, you've talked about how it will bring about changes, and Nigerians, most Nigerians cannot wait for these changes. But I'd like us to look at one aspect of the reform bills, the proposal. One aspect talks about the education sector. I don't know if you've been able to peruse or go through that aspect. I'm talking about TED fund to net fund. That's stopping in 5 years' time. We've seen the educationists, everyone is talking that why would you want to put an end to TED fund, which has actually helped in revolutionizing the educational sector. What say you about that? And while you're touching on that aspect, are there any reasons that one can hold on to say, for this reason, it needs to be reviewed? I'd like your take on this.
Thank you very much. Just also to speak to our Muslims, and even for non-Muslims, they can refer to the Holy Quran. The text of that particular ayat, in part of it that is relevant to this conversation, says, and I quote, "Fas'alu ahal al-dhikr in kuntum la ta'lamun." Seek knowledge for that which you don't understand from those that know. Now, moving on also, it is chapter 2, Part 1, Section 4, Subsection 3, that some of my, respectable scholars in the North have been throwing around on social media, that it's the section that deals with the inheritance, which with due respect is not. Now, talking about the education, and I know the conversation is around TED fund, which is the same discussions around, NIDA, Naseni, etc. Specifically about TED fund and the hue and cry that potentially TED fund may be scrapped in the next 5 years or whatever. Let us be clear. I did a summary of my take on this reform, ladies and gentlemen. Let me just quickly read it to you. In my opinion, this reform will achieve removal of multiple taxation, scaling down corporate tax to incentivize, the businesses in Nigeria, and also incentivize payment declaration and payment of taxes while encouraging businesses to thrive, raise employment level with attendant, impacts on the economy. If you go and look at the structuring of these taxes, Naseni, TED Fund, and 2 other entities, or even more, are funded from taxing corporates. And if you look at the layers of taxes on corporates in Nigeria, at the end of the day, cumulatively, is over 50% of their income. This cannot be sustainable. And in proper climes, countries that are serious have moved from funding such critical sectors via taxing entities or individuals to generating revenue for them through endowments like the president, the chairman presidential committee on fiscal policy and tax reform, Taiwo Wedele mentioned, or through other means. So in this reform, as you see creativity in removing these taxable elements that shouldn't be, like Naseni, NIDA, and TED fund grants, to focus on other things. I give you an example with TED fund. TED fund is even richer than the Ministry of Education. Meanwhile, TED fund is a subset of the subsector. And what you need to do is an impact assessment for those that are speaking to this. Let's do an impact assessment of TED fund since it has come into play and how it has been impacting. We have TED fund. We know the amount of money in trillions that is sitting in TED fund, but we have our lecturers roaming around underpaid and even sometimes not paid at all. So there is need to review that. And if I look at it from a strategic perspective, I don't think we should be seeing it as a scrapping matter. We all believe that governance should be streamlined and be, made more efficient. If and when the time comes for that to happen, we do not expect that the objective of TED fund will be killed. Indeed, we may see remodeling at that time. So I would like us to be front-facing on this, to look at the impacts, short, mid, to long term. For those that are pushing people to say they are going to scrap this or that, this is not where we are. But I will say it loud and clear. If we get to that bridge, and that is what we have to do, to reduce the cost of governance and improve efficiency, why not if not? Evolution is what brought us to where we are as human beings, and globally, evolution is the way to go.
All right. I think the final question from here would be, so what would you say are the next steps? Of course, the arguments for some are that the bill should be totally suspended. There are those who say that the bill is a good idea, but that there are clauses that need to be amended. But what would you say should be the next steps? Do you think that maybe there are a few clauses that you're not comfortable with or that you think might need amendment, or as is, the bills are good to go?
Let me be clear. I'm not saying that this bill, which is going to be a constructive disruptor, is a perfect document. And that is why the document has been subjected to legislation, or is being subjected to legislation. And there are layers to legislation, including public hearings, and we can see the engagement that have been going on. Albeit governors and other stakeholders refused to engage the committee for over 1 year. That being said, there are 4 things we should continue to do. We should read the bill. Where we don't understand, we should consult, we should engage with a view to debate, and also where necessary, we can negotiate. The document is before us Nigerians, and the northern Nigerians are not special breeds, out of other parts of the country. So we should all read the bill. They are northern Nigerians. Others have aligned to see where we believe changes should be made. We don't have to be combatant. We can be diplomatic and come with superior argument. And I'm sure the bill will be reviewed in the overall interest of the country. I will land with this. Newsflash, Northern Nigeria. Nigeria is Northeastern Development Commission. It's the only regional development commission today, by virtue of the act, where it is funded, part of its funding is 3% of the total national VAT collected before sharing to be paid into NEDC account as first line charge. NNDC, SEDC, SWCDC, and even NWDC that is undergoing legislation will all be funded by deduction from the member state of that region. NEDC is in the north. In this year, over 131 billion naira has been credited to NEDC as a budget. I don't think that means anti-north. And Mr. President said, don't tamper with that part. Let's continue like that because of the impact of Boko Haram in the northeast. I think we should always dimension issues from the right perspective in the overall interest of our people. Where things are wrong, I believe we should speak to it, but we should engage, consult, negotiate, and debate.
Strategist and policy analyst, Malam Babaisu, thank you so much for joining us and putting clarity into some of these questions that have indeed come forth concerning the bills. We look forward to have you again. Hopefully by then, we'll get to see where the bills have moved to. We did see some members of the Senate talking tough, even the Senate President saying there will be no intimidation. Let's see if this intimidation, or in quotes, the controversial bills would actually be defeated. But I'm certain that a lot will happen between now until we have you again. Thank you for joining us.
Thank you for having me.
All right. Okay, so the conversations have been very indeed interesting. If you've been following us, well, we'll urge you to do so online. We're on social media. Make sure you watch through and see. If you have any comments, also feel free to tweet us. We look forward to hear from you. Let's bring you a quick recap of some of these stories that we've talked about so far here on Breakfast Central for the first hour. Senator Okoyemi Bamidele refutes tax reform bills, a suspension claim. He talks about that. And a nationwide protest looms over Dele Farotimi's detention. You heard this in the news. I will look forward to talk about that in the next hour. EFCC commits to transparent use of recovered funds. Hopefully, they will not be reluted yet again. Coming up next here on Breakfast Central.
Coming up next, ahead of Ghana's presidential election 2024, happening tomorrow the 7th, we're going to be bringing you updates, even as we review the newspaper front pages and open the phone lines for you to call in. And we'll share with you what our top stories of the week are from the various stories we've looked at this week. Welcome back. The clamor for the release of notable human rights lawyer Dele Farotimi is set to Get Global, as a pro-democracy organization called Take It Back Movement is leading a protest in several states across the nation and also in London for the release of the remanded lawyer. The protest is set to hold on the 10th of December, being the day Dele Farotimi's formal bail application is expected to be heard in court.
We'll recall that Farotimi was arrested, taken to Ekiti State, and denied bail on account of a petition filed by Afe Babalola, who alleged that Farotimi had defamed him in his book, Nigeria and Its Criminal Justice System. The book reportedly accused Babalola of corrupting the Supreme Court to procure a fraudulent judgment. The Take It Back movement, in response to the detention of Farotimi, is demanding justice for him while calling for an end to what they describe as corruption in the judiciary. Well, joining us now, before we switch gears to our front pages of the newspapers, is human rights activist Hassan Soweto, who's here live with us in the studio. And I can use the word back at it again, because it seems like the streets keep calling. Yeah. Right? Yeah, I don't want to.
The streets keep urging him to do more.
Right?
Unfortunately, it's not really the streets this time. It would be the powers that be that are urging him to do more.
I mean, because when tyranny continues to persist, obviously citizens must continue to act. And I'd like to just start by saying that the ordeal that Dele Farotimi is passing through now is in many ways, something that affects all of us. Many people don't know that yet. But we are going to know it very soon. Don't forget that it started in August by criminalizing protest, saying that protest is treason, and if you protest, then you are liable to be condemned to death. Now, with Dele Farotimi, what they're saying is that even verbal or written criticism of anybody, especially those highly placed, cannot so end you, a few months or a few years in prison. So this is an assault against free speech, and that is why all Nigerian people, the media, NGOs, even faith-based organizations, youth groups, trade unions, must actually be very, very interested in what is happening. We have to say that we stand against this tyranny. We have to say that this assault on democratic rights and free speech must stop, because it is not just a case of an individual against another. Which individual really can be able to get an entire police force of a state to travel to another state, to arrest another person because of a matter of a disagreement on questions of, previous engagement they've had in the law court? Which individual, except an highly placed person, who clearly, has control of state structures? And that is why, for me, beyond just demanding, the release of Dele Farotimi, I also think that scrutiny and attention probably need to be turned towards the State Police to ask them exactly what exactly happened. And I know that everything that I'm saying now also means that I'm liable, to be called out for so-called defamation. But it must be clear that because if another citizen goes to a police station and reports a case of stolen phone, what happens? The police says you must pay to track the phone. If you go to the police station to report a case of stolen vehicle, you must pay to track it. So the question therefore is that, what is the budget of the state police force? How did they fund their expedition from Ekiti to Lagos State to harass, assault, and arrest a citizen of this country from Lagos State and take him back to Ekiti State? Who funded it? And I think that when we ask these questions, we are likely going to realize that there are more to this issue than just what is happening right now.
So just to be clear, let's find out what exactly your argument is or what your grouse is. One, the issue is basically because they have, Chief Afe Babalola SAN has said that he's been defamed. There's a libel suit in his book, in the book of Rotimi, Nigeria and its criminal justice system, where he said that he corrupted the Supreme Court to get a fraudulent judgment. Is your argument that Chief Afe Babalola SAN should not take him to court, or the manner in which he was taken to court?
It is the manner. I have a right to speak against another Nigerian citizen. I have a right to condemn whatever I think somebody has done that I believe to be wrong. If that person feels affected or injured by what I've said, the right that he has under the law is to sue me. And we had that just a few months ago in the case of, Comrade Femi Falana, SAN, and the very dark man, Comrade Femi Falana, SAN, also felt defamed by whatever VDM did. And what did he do? He did not resort to using, the police. He went, as any other Nigerian citizen, to the court to sue VDM. What Babalola SAN has done is what every big man or big woman in Nigeria would do, which is that they have control of state forces and they can use it to harass innocent citizens. If what is happening right now was a case of suing Rotimi, what all of us will be saying is that, we want to see what will happen at the court. We want to see the outcome of that. Just like we are waiting for the outcome of the case of Femi Falana with VDM now.
But really, is it, let me play devil's advocate here. Is it any argument, and I asked this before to another guest, and I'm going to put it to you, is it any argument that the police were probably maybe acting on their own? And I'm saying this because we've had situations where there have been conversations about abuse of power. We've interviewed people who would say, I went as a concerned citizen who felt that my rights have been abused to report to the police. The rest was for the police to act and deal with it as they deem fit. So is it any argument that maybe, just maybe, Chief Afe Babalola SAN put in his complaint and the police are acting on their own instruction and their own, acting on their own volition?
That is possible in a different country. But if it's Nigeria that we know, we can immediately understand that the police does not act in that manner. And I can give you several examples. My organization, the Education Right Campaign, we had one of our leading members killed here in Lagos State a few years ago. His name was Omomewa, a student activist in Lasso. We have reported the matter to the police. We have done everything. It's been more than 4 or so years now. The police have not been able to even carry out any diligent investigation, let alone arresting anybody as a culprit. So what that tells you, therefore, is that the police does not act in that manner, as you have said, which ought to be the case anyway in the society that works. And that is why I'm saying that we need to ask, in fact, the police commissioner of police in Ekiti State needs to be on the hot seat. He needs to be invited. We need to know whether they acted in that manner to their own volition, or maybe the complainant actually paid the police. In the case of Omewa that I just explained, the police here at Panti on different occasions asked us for money, even to carry out investigations. So that's to tell you that even the reportage of a crime of whatever sort to the police does not come free of charge. To carry out the investigation, they will charge you. So if they have to embark on this kind of expedition from one state to another to arrest another person,
it means it was funded, right?
They will also stay in an hotel and all of that. It must be funded. Is it funded from the budget of the Ekiti State Police? These are the questions we need to ask, so that I think that at some point, There might even be a case to ask for the Commissioner of Police in Lagos State, to be probed over this. How much exchange hands? How much is the budget of Ekiti State? How were they able to carry out this kind of...
I don't think they were aware from the information that we have. Lagos State wasn't...
Ekiti State Police is what I'm saying.
Okay.
How did they fund the expedition from Ekiti State to Lagos to come and arrest another citizen in a civil matter?
Okay, let's.
That is what has happened there.
I know.
It's a case of abuse of power. But even far more than that, it's also a matter of state capture of certain people who can actually actuate a police force, activate a police force to act in their own self-interest. Whereas ordinary citizens, if your car is stolen today, if your phone is stolen, if you are robbed today, you cannot get the police to act in the same manner.
Well, there are some instances where we've had different cases on that, but let's hinge on the fact that your protest is tagged Nigerians refuse to be silenced. And the date of this protest is the same day that we're expecting to hear what the court injunction or ruling would be on Dele Farotimi's case versus Afe Babalola, or the other way around. Can you tell us what this protest is all about in terms of how many cities are you looking to cover? As usual, we do know as well that there are clarity in terms of speaking to the police before you engage in a protest. Has that been done? And what's your aim with this protest, most importantly?
Well, let me start by commending the Take It Back movement, which is the organization that has called for this protest. And the Take It Back movement has experience when it comes to organizing protests. So I'm sure that when it comes to the mechanics, of how the protest will take place, who needs to be informed and co, they must have done all of it. But in any case, it must also be well stated that under Nigeria's law at present, every Nigerian has a right to organize a protest. Nobody needs to inform the police first. Informing the police, if you have to do it, is simply a matter of respect. It is not something mandated by the law. And I can quote instances, especially from a 2007 judgment, of the Court of Appeal, which has already made it very clear, that the public order the police act, police have been using prior to now, to prevent people from being able to organize protests does not apply anymore. So from that point of view, I think that this protest is already within the bounds of law. And for us in the Youth Right campaign and other movement that I belong to, we are very much in support of the action that the Take It Back movement has taken. And we'll be calling on all Nigerians, everybody who loves justice, to be prepared to be part of this struggle in all of the areas and centers that have been announced. I know that it's taking place in Ekiti, to be taking place here in Lagos, to be taking place in Abuja, a number of other states, even outside of the country. It's not just about Dele Farotimi. We have to understand, Dele Farotimi is just one person. But we are in a situation in this country where it has become very clear that if this machine of repression continues to grind everybody down, we'll come to a point in this country where there will be no country at all. Because right now, like I said earlier in my opening remarks, even the right to protest has already been made treasonable. It has been criminalized. We have Adramoye Makeleni and 10 other activists of the Ember governance struggle in August who are standing trial today because they protested peacefully against hunger. If they are found guilty of treason, according to Nigeria's law, that it carries a death penalty. It means that we are going to have a repeat of what happened in 1995, when Saroua and about 8 or so other Goni activists, were murdered, legally, by the state in this country. That is what we are going to face again, in Nigeria.
All right.
And alongside this is how we have to understand the enormity of the situation with Dele Farotimi. It's an assault on free speech. It's an attempt to make it difficult for Nigerians to ask questions, for Nigerians to complain about their leaders. And we have to say, no, enough is enough.
All right.
If you are defamed, go to court like any other private citizen.
All right, as quickly as possible. So this protest is happening in Lagos, Abuja, Ekiti, and London. There was a protest, that the End Bad Governance protest, and we saw how the End Bad Governance protest turned out. The people still facing charges, and you've alluded to that. How efficient, really, do you think this protest will be? And there are those who argue that the time frame given was too long, that the protest should have happened immediately. So do you think that the fact that it was left to happen on the 10th would get as much impact as is expected? And what impact do you think it will bring?
The impact will be to show to the judiciary that Nigerians are opposed to the ordeal of Delefaro Timi and they want him freed immediately. Don't forget that on that 10th, that is when his application for bail will be had. So the idea is that if the judge, is ready to be fair to Nigerians, he has an opportunity, to do right by Nigerians on that day by granting that bail application and allowing Delefaro Timi to rejoin his family so that he can then present himself in court later on to answer to whatever charges are against him. I'm sure that the protest will be effective and impactful in that sense. But however, if on that day the judge persists in denying bail, then it means that the level of the engagement would have to change, after 10th of December. Then we have to look at other actions that we are going to take. Because again, it is not just about Delefaro Timi. It is about all of us. And we have to continue to insist that this tyranny will not be allowed to overtake our country.
Right. Okay. Anyway, thank you for joining us, Hassan Soweto. It's just 4 days' time, December 10th. That's on Tuesday. And we'll get to see what will happen on that day. But I mean,
it's interesting that it falls December 10th, if I'm correct, is International Human Rights Day. So it's interesting that it should fall on that day. I think it is.
Well, let's see if human rights will actually come to play on that day. Thank you for joining us. We'll go for a short break. When we do return, we'll bring to you what the front pages of the papers are saying. So do stay with us. Let's go straight to the front pages of the newspapers this morning. Joining us is former Chief Press Secretary to Governor Ambode, former editor as well on Sunday Independent. Thank you so much for being here, sir. We do have Mr. Abib Aruna who joins us. Good to be here.
Good morning.
All right. How was it for you getting here? Very easy. If your price is...
I live around.
Oh, okay. Oh, so it was just a stone throw. Okay, that's fine. Let's jump in on the papers very quickly. Let's look at Punch. That's our very first paper this morning. 29 states spent 2 trillion naira on travels and others, according to report. State governors borrowed 533 billion naira, generated 1.92 trillion naira IGR, serviced debt with 658 billion naira. So it's kind of like a cycle, okay? Well, anyway, military retirees shot finance ministry over unpaid entitlements. You can see the pictures there. These are our own vets, our veterans, and we did talk about this in the first hour. In case you missed out, you don't want to go online and catch up with that. Tax reform, Senate denies suspending debate as Southern senators meet. APC berates faction flooding Kano with Jonathan's 2027 posters. The posters are indeed circulating everywhere. PDP trustees tackle NWC over neck meet Wike in January. That's another story. Let me take just quickly one or two more. No report of Lagos missing party girls, according to police. There's a little insight into that story that some girls were missing. But the police have come out to say no report of Lagos missing party girls. And finally, overtime vehicles, customs plan auction after 2-week ultimatum. So after 2 weeks, any vehicle that does an overtime would be auctioned by customs. That's what I'm taking on the Punch newspaper. Let's go to another one quickly.
All right, let's move on to the next paper, which is the Leadership newspaper. On the front page of the Leadership, climate crisis threatens Nigeria's health system. 21% of Nigeria's disease burden climate-related, according to the World Health Organization. 53 million need to be relocated. Experts say impact on health sector may worsen. PDP Labour Party kick as 5 lawmakers join APC. Federal government to resuscitate Bobi Grazing Reserve. Delefaro Timi's book, now bestseller on Amazon after arrest. Troops kill 8,034 terrorists in 1 year, according to the Defense Headquarters. And Wike clarifies EFCC road controversy. Final story, tax reform bills. We won't be intimidated, says Akpabio. And that's all on the front page of Leadership. Let's start off with the Delefaro Timi story, which is one of the biggest stories online. You've been following with it. Amazon, his book, I'm pretty sure that Delefaro Timi will have never been able to imagine that his book will sell out the way that it has. People are ordering hundreds, and doing giveaway on social media. So tell us, your general sense of what is going on and what your projections for, what it will turn out to be eventually.
You see, I always say one thing. If there are no tyrants, there won't be heroes. I was a victim of that kind of scenario. There are no tyrants, there won't be heroes. The arrest, or if you like, abduction of the famous articulate lawyer, Farotimi, who is darling of everybody in social media because of his forthrightness, because of his consistency, and because of his views on state of the nation. The abduction has generated a lot of controversy. You know, the way and manner was abducted by the police from Ekiti State in Lagos. You know, so they've made him a hero. They made him very popular. They made the book a bestseller, as expected. So the guy will come out from the prison, if ultimately will come out the next city. They cannot afford this kind of onslaught. They are saying in the social media, he will come out and he will become a multi-millionaire.
Even though I hear that, I'm not sure. I hear that the proceeds of that book are...
I ordered for the book yesterday. I ordered for the book yesterday. It was not available.
Wow.
So that is the way it is. You know, this is a man that people like what he says all the time. You now went to his office. As if we're in the military era. You were outside the office, you allowed the staff, seize their phones, and the guy was abducted, taken to Ekiti. In a pre-planned manner. And the foreign magistrate in the Ekiti State kept him in prison. You know, I'm sure in the next sitting he'll be released. You know, but they've succeeded, as I said, in making the guy a hero. But the lesson should not be lost. It is the fact that the police does not have that right. They do not have that right to come to anybody's house or office and abduct him. Follow the normal procedure. Go to court. If you're not comfortable with the publication, it's not a criminal offense, as I say. Go to court and seek for damages, not contravening and going around the law to harass another man.
There's a lot to say about this particular issue, but you know what? Because of the interest of time, let's look at the tax reform. Senate denies suspending the debate as Southern senators have met and they've spoken strongly that they are right behind the tax reform bill. The Senate President himself has said that they're not backing down. What's your take on this entire tax reform?
I believe that the country was in a mess before the president came in. I believe that we're not making enough revenue. Although there was the need for the government to create opportunities, avenues to make more revenue, naturally. But I don't believe that people should be forced to face a lot of hardship. There should be human face to these policies that they were introducing. I've read the tax bill, the 4 bills, I've read them, and there's nothing bad in it. I'm not particularly comfortable with all the policies of this government, people know. But this tax matter, I'm wholly in support. Because, you see, you can't be doing things in the old ways and expect result. You know, the tax bill will affect individuals positively. It will affect companies, corporations positively. It will affect the state governments. They make more money. They're looking towards to raise more money and get return from the federal government. And it will also help the federal government. So why are they afraid? You know, but if you look at the history of taxation, the greatest country today on earth, United States, emerged because of taxation. The Boston Tea Party that led to their independence. So taxes is always very sensitive. You know, you can expect this kind of controversy to be generated. But at the same time, happily, they are consulting. Happily, too, the President said, we have not thrown away the bill. Only the President introduced the bill, send the bill to us. It's only him that can withdraw the bill. We have not thrown it away. And one thing that he said that I like is that they can't be intimidated. If you don't like the bill, for goodness sake, go to the public hearing, make your position known. But to me, it's the best, but there should be more education, more enlightenment. People should know what it's all about so they can support it.
Interesting. Well, let's also quickly take a look at Another story, very quickly. APC have come out to berate faction flooding Kano with Jonathan's 2027 poster. In the north, it said that yesterday his poster for presidency was being spread in different parts of the states, and APC is coming out to say no, that's unheard of. That shouldn't be done. What's your take on that? Do you think it's a tad bit too early?
It's never too early. Politicians are always very ambitious.
Do you see Jonathan returning?
There are speculations in 2023 that Jonathan will run under APC. Turned out to be untrue. So I think it's too early for us to be speculating in that direction. But at the same time, that shows that Jonathan is still very popular. The way and manner he left government made him a hero, sort of. So people are inclined to believe that any party that the man decided to reach his tent, that party may likely be supported by Nigerians. But it's still very popular. And also forget that APC has factions in Kano. Many political leaders are not in support of Ganduje. So they may be trying to fly a kite to see how it will turn out. But for now, it's still very early. But in politics, anything can happen.
Right, anything can happen. Okay, I think we've touched on majority of the stories because if we see it's a multiplicity. Okay, I think the final story, PDP Labour Party kickers, 5 lawmakers join APC. There's lots, I mean, I think this is the norm. We are used to this in Nigeria's political.
It's unfortunate.
Yes.
Maybe because of our embryonic nature. Democracy is still growing. But it happens to about democracies. But now, in those places, it's based on ideology. There must be some. You are expressing reservation. I don't like the way things have been run. So you are leaving the party to be independent, not joining your opposition party. In Delta State, the daughter of former governor, Chivibori, there was a report this morning that there's an agreement between the daughter of Chivibori and the elders in Delta that, okay, we allow you to go for.
Sorry?
There was an agreement, implicitly, if you like, that there should be a meeting. They had a meeting, and they allowed the daughter of the Bori to go for.
APC.
To go for, yes, for the seat. You know, there's this, what they call, they rotate these things in these states. That this time around, Ethiopia, one will go for this, Ethiopia, not to go for the other one. So they allow the lady to contest, and she won. So there's a possibility that they will not allow her to recontest. So it was based on that, according to report, that the lady now said, okay, let me play on the safer side. Let me
move to
another party, so I can easily get a ticket, I contest. It's a normal politics. And don't forget that the former governor did a lot in that state. He's very popular and very consequential in the direction of politics in that state. So anything they are doing and saying, they should bear in mind that he has enough support at the grassroots. People like him. You know, so it's not unexpected that he was the one that told you to move to another party to contest. But it's a normal thing. But there is no any major crisis in the party to warrant there.
So that's where I'm coming to, because I don't know if I mean, you're aware, just like every other Nigerian, what the law says. Defecting. If you're defecting to another party, of course, ordinarily, what should it cost a politician to just move when there's no problem in his party? We've seen this similar issue play out in Rivers State, where 27 or now 24 members decided to just defect or decamp to another political party, where they were waving the flags, singing along, and even at an event, they climbed the stage and they were surprisingly singing and saying yes. But all of a sudden, they saw that the tables had turned, and they quickly thought they could use the reverse gear and go back and take their seats.
The law is very clear.
And what does the law say?
The law is very clear. There's no crisis in your party.
That's it.
You cannot leave.
So,
and if you leave when there's no crisis, they should declare your seat vacant.
That's it.
So
the LP candidates who have left, are they going to cite Julius Abure's embattled?
But there's some crisis in LP.
Yes, so they're going to use the embattled chair of the Labour Party as an example or a reason for them to move?
Absolutely, but there is some crisis in LP. So there is some grand justification for them that these guys are fighting. Look at the Aburi and the other camp, and the Obi camp. So, to an extent, they can justify it.
All right.
But those rivers are not being able to justify their own infection.
All right, let's move on to our final paper, the Daily Trust. There are a number of stories that are repeated in the others, so I'll probably just skip some. Okay, reps move to stop multiple budgets, proposed deadline for presentation. Tax reform bills, we're going ahead for Nigeria's sake, Akpabio says. Islam not against girl-child education, says Sultan. Max airplane carrying Zulum's deputy and others makes emergency landing. Ex-servicemen shot finance ministry over unpaid entitlements. Corruption has brought Nigeria to its knees, says ICPC. I thought I was joking, says Tanko Yakasai at 99. And man breaks wife's hand, leg, for attending clinic without permission. Of course, I will start with that story. I'm sure that it's not a surprise that I will take that story because the man breaks wife's hand, leg for attending clinic without permission. I've looked online to see the story. Turns out she had been sick for 4 months, she says. The husband had gotten a health worker to come and treat her at home. She wasn't getting any better. But then her own mother was also sick, right? And she took the mom to the hospital. They gave some medication. The man came home, saw medication in her bag, and the anger was, why did you go to the hospital without me? And she said, it's not me. I didn't go there. It's the health worker. You know, it's my mom. I took my mom for treatment, and that's the medication they gave her. So he asked her, will you take me to the health worker that gave you the medicine? She said yes. And while she went inside to dress up, the husband comes in, locks the door, and starts to beat her. And then after beating her and hurting her, he begs her not to tell anybody. And why I highlight the story is because from the 25th of November up until the 10th of December, around the world, there's 16 days activism against gender-based violence. And it is stories like this that just really further amplify the fact that whilst we speak up against gender-based violence, I think that men also have a role to speak and hold other men accountable when it comes to situations where they are outrightly abusing and jeopardizing the lives of their wives.
Then again, it depends on the victim. If the victim is ready to report the abuse to the appropriate authorities. You know, in some part of the country, they are afraid, they're always afraid to report these abuses to the police. You know, but in Lagos, when we're in government, the law is very strict. If you abuse the other gender, I don't like it to go scot-free. In fact, there's no option of fine in Lagos State. Yes, but we normally have them to disseminate this information in our office. So it's a serious offense.
It is a
gender-based violence in Lagos State. If you are found guilty, there are consequences. You don't go scot-free.
Yes, I think I must applaud Lagos State
to go out to report these incidences to the appropriate authorities.
And I agree with you that Lagos State has done a lot of work. The Lagos State Sexual and Domestic Violence Response Team has been very active in terms of ensuring this not occurs. This happened in Sokoto. And, you know, I would encourage and hope that more people will speak up when they're being abused.
Absolutely.
Some of the time, why these people don't speak up is because when they speak up, sometimes they blame them. They tell them, marriage is like that in everybody's family. You don't know what other people are dealing with. Save your own marriage for the sake of your children. But if we had systems that empowered more women financially, we probably would see them being confident enough to come out to share. But thank you very much for speaking about that. And final story that I'll take, ex-servicemen shot finance, this on the Daily Trust, ex-servicemen shot finance ministry over unpaid entitlements. We took that report today, where these are men that have served in the military, some in their 60s, 65 and above, and they are still asking for their entitlements. They had to shut down the ministry. They went to protests.
That is pathetic. But this is the most important story today in Delhi. It's heinous. It's tragic and totally unacceptable. In some countries, they call them seniors. For example, people like me, I'm above 60. So I'm entitled to something from government. I haven't served, I haven't paid my taxes. In Nigeria, you can imagine, for these people to have went to the extent of shutting down the Minister of Finance, means that they've been frustrated for long. So it's unfortunate that a country where there is massive corruption, a country where an individual was found to be building 753 53 duplexes, and you cannot pay pension. This is absurd. I don't understand the way we think. Taking care of seniors in some countries is a priority. Even in Africa, it's not done. You know, and it's high time we start to address all these things. If there's protest in the land, it should be because of these kind of things. People that serve Nigeria, people that live their life to serve this country, they're now old, cannot pay them their entitlement, and life is going on. I think it's not acceptable. It should be condemned totally by Nigerians, and they should be paid their entitlement immediately.
However, some people will say that this is not the first time that they are being owed salaries or arrears, especially looking at the past where they've been calling and asking for payment. But one would also want to ask, is it that our veterans are not placed in a high and respectable position so that when they are done, their emoluments or whatever belongs to them can be paid to them? And what really stops the government from solving these entire payment issues out?
The fallout ultimately will be that people currently in service, we see what is going on, and I say, okay, this is what I will get when I leave service, when I'm old, and I will take care and prepare for that future.
That's it.
And the system rewards for it.
It also sparks
rewards for it. And what is the National Assembly doing about it?
Well,
there are lawmakers in this country who are engaged, who have become a department of Asurok. These are the issues that they should be addressing. These are content issues that they should be addressing.
Well, they would say the tax reform.
No, it's very important. You can't leave the seniors to suffer about their service country.
You see, this gives room for an introduction to corruption. Because whether you like it or not, you just mentioned a very key factor there. Because those who are currently in service are seeing what is happening to their seniors. They will start to think, and I mean, we're not insinuating, we're just saying that this could lead to, you know what, let me secure my future very quickly. Whatever I can get,
let me tell you something.
Let me get it.
I have some friends that are now back. They stayed in UK for more than 3 decades. They are back in town, back in Nigeria. Do you know that their pensions are paid as at when due? They even called them to remind them that, about your head, are you coming for a checkup? Or are you coming for checkup? You see, they take care of them regularly. There's no day after. They pay immediately. So what is wrong? And the money is there. You can see it. Why are we toying with people's life and future? Something is wrong with us. Servicemen and service country with their lives, and they're not paying their pensions and gratuity. And we are moving around and see nothing happens.
But yet, the members of the National Assembly did get a raise, and not forgetting to the judges as well. The judiciary also got a raise as well. But the men who put their life on the line to protect and secure the land,
they're not taken care of. And thank God that the media is putting it on the spotlight.
Yes.
But this is a major issue that must be tackled.
Right,
thank God for that.
All right, Habib Aruna, thank you so much for your time with us this morning. We thoroughly enjoyed having you review the papers with us. We'll go on a quick break, and when we come back, we have one more story before we call it a day on Breakfast Central.
Welcome back. Ghana is heading for its 9th general election since multi-party politics indeed resumed in 1992. On 7th of December, nearly 18.8 million Ghanaians will decide on a new president. The current vice president, Mahamudu Bawumia of the New Patriotic Party, NPP, and the former president, John Mahama of the National Democratic Congress, NDC, are indeed the two leading candidates out of many that would be indeed vying for that top seat right there in Ghana. Well, joining us to discuss this very quickly, we do have a guest who comes all the way from Ghana. He's the chief crusader, Crusaders Against Corruption, Emmanuel Wilson Jr. joins us from Ghana. Thanks for being here.
It's a pleasure. Good morning.
All right, good morning. Well, we're just highlighting just two of the many candidates because they seem to be the main candidates for this election. Let's talk about the current vice president who's vying for that seat, looking forward to wear the shoes of the president. What's your take on Ghanaians? What are they saying, especially looking at the fact that he's part of this current administration and still Ghana is facing its worst decade of economic hardship?
All right. It seems we are having a bit of challenge with the network. We're hoping that we can reconnect.
The very last sentence. You said, what's my take on what?
Basically,
I think so. Let me, I'm having a little challenge with the network. I'm trying to, can you hear me?
Yes, we can hear you. Please go ahead.
Okay, very well. So can you just briefly recap the question?
The summary of the question basically is your thoughts regarding the fact that even both leading contestants, one is in office currently and the other has been in office before, to say, what exactly are Ghanaians saying concerning the fact that these people have had their time and their chance in power and yet they're about to vie for office again as the potential leading candidates. Is Ghana ready for a change? Is Ghana comfortable with the fact that it seems like they might be recycling old leaders?
Well, the truth of the matter is that this coming election seems to be hinged on a number of factors. The first one has to do with the economy, how the economy is performing. And the second one has to do with other issues with regards to matters of corruption. The general sentiment among Ghanaians is that the economy seems not to be doing very well, particularly when you have to do with our current